On my way right now to the San Fernando Valley, but real quick, I want to thank my new Patreon supporters, Lorio 711, Oliver Young, Richie Rich, and Wow Man. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. Now let's go see what we can find. Nestled right in between the 101 freeway and Ventura Boulevard, this used to be Farrells Ice Cream. I remember the Farrells building being here pretty much throughout my entire childhood. I don't know when it closed, or at least when this location closed, but like I said, I remember the building always being here. The only Farrells ice cream that I ever went to was actually in Valencia. I went there with my wife when we were dating. We had the pig trough, we finished the whole thing, it was delicious. But yeah, I definitely remember the Farrells building being here on Canoga, driving by it all the time, staring at it, wanting to go to it, but we never did. WAD Appliance is just another one of those businesses that is a Valley staple. It's always been around. If you lived in the Valley, grew up in the Valley, the odds are you remember WAD Appliance. They opened in 1930. They moved to the Valley in the 1950s, and this location on Sherman Way opened on August 4th, 1962. It's been here ever since. I remember in the 90s, their local low-budget commercials were on TV constantly. So again, if you lived in the Valley, like in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure you remember the WAD Appliance commercials that were always on TV. And WAD Appliance was also featured in the TV show My Name is Earl in quite a few episodes. Earl and his brother Randy actually got a job here at WAD Appliance, and so it was featured in a few episodes. Well, in one of my recent videos, I showed you guys the Toys R Us on Sherman Way, and I'm sad to say it is completely gone now. They finished tearing it down. All of our childhood memories are gone. And I also showed you guys that right next door used to be a 7-Eleven that then turned into a Circle K, and then at the time of my video was closed down, fenced off, looked like it was about to be demolished, and strangely enough, it's now back to being a 7-Eleven. Got some grand opening flags and a big inflatable Slurpee on the roof, so I'm not really sure why it looked like it was about to be torn down, but it's back to being a 7-Eleven again. So this is the 5th place that I ever lived, and I actually have a lot of bad memories of this house. Some of the worst moments of my life happened in this house, but I have a lot of good memories from this house too. This is where I lived when I started my first band, so I had a lot of band practices at this house. We actually practiced right there on that front porch a couple of times before my parents let me turn one of the bedrooms into a music room. Man, the neighbors must have loved us. A lot of skateboarding at this house. In the backyard, I had quarter pipes, fun boxes, launch ramps. Actually, right out here in front, I had my own parking block that my dad brought home. He just got it from a parking lot and brought it home. And it stayed in this driveway up until a couple of years ago, so probably almost 30 years. Now, the house didn't look like this when I lived here. It was a lot more run down, but somebody bought it a couple of years ago and remodeled the entire thing. Man, I used to spend hours just skating on that curb right across the street from my house. Huh, I just noticed they put a driveway on the curb. Well, it wouldn't have been very much fun to skate if it had that back then. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, this is the fence that we used to climb to get into the wash that was right behind my house. We used to just go back there and hang out all the time, and I have no idea why. Probably just because we knew we weren't supposed to. So that neighborhood that I just showed you that I used to live in is right over there on the other side of those houses. And this was always a really dangerous intersection, a lot of accidents. And when we lived here, my brother actually got into a pretty bad accident. He went to Circuit City, he purchased his very first CD player and the Dr. Dre Chronic CD, so this was in the early 1990s. He was coming home, somebody ran the light right here, crashed into him, and the car that hit him ended up on the front lawn of that house right there on the corner. So after that accident, the house ended up adding a few cement pillars in front to try and prevent other cars from ending up on their front lawn. They eventually ended up putting a big fence around the entire yard, and then now they've got the cement post, the fence, and it's completely covered in the bushes. So if you're ever driving through this intersection and you notice that house, just know that my brother played a small part in making it look that way. The other thing I wanted to point out is that dog park right across the street. When I was a kid, that was just a big empty lot. It pretty much went from the corner right here all the way down there. And every year there was a big carnival that came to town and set up right here in this big lot. We were always really excited for it. I was always waiting for that carnival every year. Right over there where that fence is, that was my friend's house, and I can remember standing in his backyard, watching them bring in all the rides on the back of trucks and then setting up the rides and just waiting for the carnival to start. So does anybody else that grew up in the valley remember the carnival that used to set up on this corner? Speaking of carnivals, this Catholic school, St. Bridget's of Sweden, I had a lot of friends that went to junior high here, and they had a carnival every year. And so I can remember coming here with my friends that I had made that attended this school, coming to the carnival, having a good time. I don't know that it was a good carnival, but you know, good memories that I have. And then right across the street, that restaurant right over there, back in the day, that was a Tommy's, but it was a fake Tommy's, Tommies. But they did a really good job of passing it off as a real Tommy's. And I think, like when I went there as a kid, I didn't realize that it was not the same as the real Tommy's. It took me a little while to figure it out. This is the world famous Van Nuys Boulevard, made famous for its cruising. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, this was the place to be. It was always packed. My dad was in one of the bigger Van Nuys Boulevard car clubs. Everybody was out here. So much so that they made a movie about it called Van Nuys Boulevard. The cops started cracking down, so it died out. They tried to bring it back about maybe 15 years ago. It died out again, but it's back again. Mostly lowriders now. You still get a little bit of everybody, hot rods, muscle cars. You get a lot of the vans that were out here in the 70s, but mostly lowriders. This area right here where this Ralph's is, this parking lot used to be a really big part of the cruising. It was cool because everyone would crowd in this parking lot, and you could make a right on Burbank and then turn into the Ralph's parking lot and then cruise through here, and everybody would be crowded in there watching you cruise through. But Ralph's didn't like that, and they put a stop to it. So now I believe in the original days of cruising Van Nuys Boulevard, it was a much longer stretch, like going from around the 101 freeway all the way up past Sherman Way. Nowadays when they cruise Van Nuys, it's more right here in this area, like from Burbank, I think, to around Oxnard. All the cars park on either side of the boulevard right here, and everybody cruises up and down. And right here in the big center lane, people like to park here and hop their cars and whatnot. The cops really don't like that. Right here, Keys on Van Nuys. If you're from the valley, the odds are you remember those really annoying commercials for Keys on Van Nuys. So yeah, right here at Oxnard is pretty much the turnaround spot. Now when people cruise Van Nuys, it's a much smaller cruising area. I think because when cruising Van Nuys Boulevard was really popular in like the 60s and 70s, Van Nuys was a more poppin' street. It had Bob's Big Boy, Farrells Ice Cream, just a lot more places to hang out. And now it's a lot of car dealerships and just kind of regular retail businesses. So I think that's why they just stick in that small area now. Over here is the Van Nuys Courthouse. If you're from the valley, I'm sure you came here to pay some tickets, especially if you used to cruise Van Nuys Boulevard. Happy Dogs, a little hot dog stand that's been here a really long time. Corkis restaurant, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this was one of the last remaining places from the original cruising days. It closed down a couple of years ago, and as you can see, it's probably going to be demolished soon. One of these buildings, I think it was this very first one, used to be the Recycler. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it was a newspaper back before Craigslist, before eBay, before any of that. It was a newspaper where people would put ads trying to sell or get rid of their used stuff. And, you know, anything from cars to couches, refrigerators, anything. And then there was a free ad section. And this was the Recycler building where you could come here the day that it came out. I think it was on Thursdays. You could come here right when they opened and purchase a Recycler before it was in any of the stores. And so every once in a while, we would come here on that day. My dad would go into work late on that day. We'd get donuts, we'd come here, we'd wait in line, and we'd be one of the first people to buy a Recycler newspaper. And then right down the street over there, there was a payphone, and you would see people, they would get the paper, they would run out here, they would look through the ads, and they would run to the payphone and start calling the ads, especially for the free stuff, because like I said, there was free ads, and you could always find really cool stuff in there, but you had to call right away. And I remember eventually I started putting ads in the paper, and I hated it because our phone would start ringing at 7:05 a.m. Thursday morning, and I would get mad and tell people, you know, call back in 3 hours. Why are you calling so early? But that was the way it worked. People wanted to get the good deals. Right next to where that recycler building was, this is the old 4 and 20 restaurant. Been here a long time. It's closed down now. Who knows what's going to become of this spot. And correct me if I'm wrong, this Sizzler right here used to be the Farrells Ice Cream on Van Nuys Boulevard. Now there's some arguments online about where that Farrells on Van Nuys Boulevard was. Some people say it was down the street, but I think this was the location. Captain Ed's been there since the 60s. My dad took me there in the late 80s, and at the time they had a little music section, and my dad purchased the Black Sabbath Paranoid cassette tape. My dad made me sit there and listen to the whole thing because he said it was one of the greatest records. The old Army surplus store on Van Nuys Boulevard that was here forever. I know I did some shopping here back in the day. It's almost unrecognizable now. You can see in this picture that I matched up right here, people cruising past Burbank on Van Nuys Boulevard. That mobile gas station still there. The Ralphs in the background used to be a Hughes Market. Val Surf has always been a huge part of the Valley surf and skate scene, and although they had multiple locations, I think this one on Riverside and Whitsett was probably the most popular. However, this was not the first Val Surf. The very first Val Surf is right around the corner on Riverside. Right there, that little building with the blue awning, that's the original Val Surf. Just the half of the building on the right side of the utility pole. It opened up in 1962, and it was the first surf and skate shop in the San Fernando Valley. So Val Surf pretty much introduced surfing to the valley. Like I said, it's just right around the corner from where their current location is. You can see the sign peeking around the corner right there.